Last week's episode was part one of a two-part series of Wilsons in the 2026 Milan Cortina Winter Olympics. That was still going on until 3 days ago as of this episode recording. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cuz Wilson Show. I'm your Wilsonologist, Kenny Wilson, and this week is going to be a good one. I am real excited about it. My voice is a little bit better, not 100%, but it's a little better than the last 2 weeks, that's for sure. Last week was our part one of the two-part series on Wilsons in the Winter Olympics, and that part one included the Wilson sisters on the mountain and a hockey player in men's ice hockey. Today's podcast is part two, and it's going to be a little bit longer because we have a lot of Wilsons to cover in our people, places, and things categories as they deal with the Winter Olympics in Italy. We can make our episodes short, medium, or long as we want to because we have no restrictions from advertisers or media giants. We don't have ads in our podcast. We're listener-supported from people like you. Normally, our episodes are about 30 minutes, but today's going to be a little bit longer. For this week's episode of People, Places, and Things Named Wilson, in our People category, we talk about women's bobsledders and a famous Olympic women's hockey player from the past. In our Places category, we talk about a Wilson winery in southern Italy. And for our Things this week, we're going to talk about a U.S. Figure Skating Hall of Fame award, which has been long overdue from a skating champion named Wilson. Okay, let's get started with our People category, which actually has 3 parts. Part 1 is about 2 Wilsons in the Olympics sliding sports division.
Okay, so when the 2026 Milano Cortina Winter Olympics roll around, some of the absolute best stories are going to be unfolding on the bobsleigh tack. And one of those stories, well, it's about a lot more than just winning a medal. It's about a push that could honestly change the sport forever. So, let's dive in. Just let that sink in for a second. That single sentence right there, it captures the sheer weight and possibility of this moment. You know, for years, winter sports have struggled with diversity. An all-Black Canadian sled on that Olympic podium, that would be totally unprecedented. It would shatter old ideas about who belongs on the ice and just maybe inspire a whole new generation.
So who is the athlete at the center of all this talk? Well, her journey to the top of this incredibly demanding sport is just as remarkable as the history she is on the verge of making. All right, let's start at the beginning, because this is the story of Dawn Richardson Wilson, an athlete whose path to Team Canada actually began on a whole different continent. Dawn was born in Accra, Ghana, and moved to Canada with her mom when she was just 2. But then, when she was only 6 years old, her mother passed away. She was raised by her brother and sister-in-law. I mean, think about that. It's a journey that started with this profound loss, but was completely defined by her incredible resilience. She was a super talented multi-sport athlete, found bobsleigh in 2018, and bam, just 4 years later, she was an Olympian. At the 2022 Beijing Games, she and her pilot, Cynthia Appia, slid to a really solid 8th place finish. Now, for a debut, that is a huge deal. It was the kind of performance that puts the world on notice and tells everyone you're a rising star in the sport. But what happened next is what makes the story so fascinating. Right after her very first Olympics, at what should have been a peak moment, she made a choice that probably surprised a lot of people. She just walked away. Now, for an athlete who just lived out their Olympic dream, that sounds kind of strange, right? But this was an ending. Oh no, this was a strategic pivot, a master plan. See, Dawn knew that to get from the top 10 onto that podium, she needed something more. She stepped away from the sled specifically to focus on the raw power of sprinting, that explosive start that can make or break a bobsleigh run. So what does she do? She enrolled at the University of Calgary and joined their track and field team. And her plan? It didn't just work. It was a massive success. I mean, she didn't just practice. She absolutely dominated, winning the Canada West 60-meter championship 3 years in a row. She wasn't just training, she was winning, sharpening her speed against the best university athletes in the entire country. But here's the thing.
Dawn's story of breaking down barriers isn't happening in a vacuum. She's actually part of a bigger movement of athletes who are really changing the face of winter sports in Canada, bringing all new backgrounds and fresh perspectives to the ice. And that's where we meet another trailblazer on the Canadian national team, an athlete who has her own unique and powerful story in the world of bobsleigh. This just shows you the different ways you can get to the top. Meet Etoy Wilson. Her journey didn't start on a track, it started in competitive show jumping. Talk about an unexpected place to find a bobsledder's talent, right? And with Indigenous and Black heritage, she brings this powerful mix of identities you just don't see very often in the sport. And Eden's own words really capture that shared mission. It's not just about their own success, it's about blazing a trail. It's about making the sport more diverse, more inclusive for everyone who comes next. Together, these two really represent a brand new chapter for bobsleigh in Canada. So let's get to the final act of this story, Dawn's big return. With her track career a huge success, she came back to bobsleigh, officially rejoining the national team, with her eyes locked on Milano Cortina. And there it is. It's official. Dawn Richardson Wilson is back on the Canadian Olympic bobsleigh team. The detour is over, the goal is crystal clear, and her spot is locked in. And she came back as a different athlete. Her teammates, her coaches, they all noticed it right away. The quiet, kind of timid person was gone, replaced by what one teammate called a freak of nature with a beast mentality. Her calculated risk paid off. Big time. This quote right here tells you everything you need to know about her new mindset. The first Olympics, yeah, they were about getting experience. But this time, as she says herself, the expectation is a medal. The goal has totally shifted from just participating to standing on that podium. So as we look ahead to 2026, you've got to understand that Dawn Richardson Wilson is on a dual quest. Yes, of course, she's racing for a medal, but she's also pushing for something much bigger, a historic moment for representation that could inspire so many others to see a place for themselves in a sport where they maybe never felt they belonged. And really, that's what we're left with. Win or lose, her journey has already changed the conversation. The only question left is, as she's rocketing down that track in Italy, what new trails is she going to blaze for all the people watching?
Thank you so much for that. That was really cool. Now, part 2 is about a women's ice hockey star named Wilson from the past. The Olympic ice hockey rivalry between Canada and the USA is fierce, and it continued this year in dramatic fashion because the gold medal was won in overtime for both the women's and the men's divisions. Canada is still leading the overall historic battles between USA and Canada, and part of that is because of Stacy Wilson.
You know, some athletes just define an era, but every so often you get someone who builds the entire stadium. Today we're going to talk about the story of Stacy Wilson, a true foundational figure whose career wasn't just about winning, it was about building the very world of women's hockey as we know it. So, to really understand Stacy Wilson's impact, we've got to start by talking about her role as a genuine pioneer of the game. So take a look. This is Stacy Wilson wearing the captain's C for Canada. And this wasn't just any game. She was the very first person chosen to lead Canada's women's hockey team onto the Olympic stage, a moment that literally changed the sport forever. Now, that word pioneer gets thrown around a lot, right? But it just perfectly captures her journey. She wasn't just joining a league or a team. A lot of the time, she was the one creating them. She was developing new pathways for women in a sport that really hadn't made much room for them yet. So, what does it really take to become that kind of pioneer? Well, for Stacy Wilson, it meant forging a path that she literally had to carve out for herself. I mean, from the very beginning, nothing was handed to her. The only way for a girl with her talent to play competitively was to join the boys' teams. Think about that. She wasn't just playing a sport. She was challenging a whole system from day one. And you can see her determination at every single turn. At university in '84, there's no women's team. So what does she do? She co-founds one. They're competing in hand-me-down jerseys and having to fundraise just for ice time. Just 2 years later, she's the top scorer in the entire country. And after that, her senior team in Moncton was so good, they often had to play against men's teams just to find a real challenge. She didn't find opportunities, she created them from scratch. That relentless drive, it led her straight to the national stage, where she didn't just compete,
She and Team Canada absolutely dominated for an entire decade.
4. Let's just start with that number. That's how many World Championship gold medals Stacy Wilson and Team Canada won in 1990, 92, 94, and 97. But believe me, that's just the start.
35. That was Team Canada's incredible consecutive winning streak at the World Championships, an absolute dynasty that she was at the very heart of.
And maybe the most stunning number of all, 0. That's how many games they lost during that entire streak. Not a single one. Just unbelievable. The data itself just tells a story of pure dominance. Look at it. Across 7 straight tournaments, a perfect record. 35 games played, 35 wins. This wasn't just a good team. This was one of the most untouchable dynasties in the history of international sports.
And right at the center of this incredible team, one player consistently rose as the leader. Wilson didn't just wear a jersey, she wore the captain's C, and she embodied that team's standard of excellence.
Her leadership journey was crystal clear. She became an assistant captain in 94 and took over as the full-time captain just a year later. She led the team to World Championship gold in 97 and then to the ultimate stage, the 1998 Olympics. And this all led to a truly historic moment. When women's hockey finally claimed its global spotlight at the Nagano Olympics, it was Stacy Wilson leading Team Canada onto the ice. They battled all the way to a silver medal, cementing their place and her legacy in hockey history.
But her story doesn't end when her playing career does. See, for a true builder, retirement is just a transition to the next phase of construction.
She just kept building the sport brick by brick, even off the ice. In 95, while she was still playing, she launched a major hockey school for girls. In 2000, she wrote a book to guide the next generation. And as a coach, she helped shape a university dynasty, winning 3 straight NCAA titles. Player, mentor, author, coach, every role was about growing the game.
So, naturally, the official accolades followed. Athlete of the Year, multiple Hall of Fame inductions, including becoming the very first woman inducted into her university's Hockey Hall of Fame. Each award just confirmed a legacy built on excellence and relentless dedication. This brings us to a final and, I think, crucial question. We all celebrate the stars of today, but who are the ones who lay the foundation when no one is watching? Stacy Wilson's story is this powerful reminder that the games we love exist because of pioneers who had the vision and the grit to build them from the ground up.
That's pretty amazing, isn't it? I can't wait till the next Winter Olympics now. But wait, there's more. For part 3 of our People's category, I have a question. Here's my question. How many athletes from Mexico can you list who have ever won a medal in Winter Olympic sports? Well, let's find out in this part 3 of the People category.
Okay, so when you think of Winter Olympics powerhouses, let's be honest, Mexico probably isn't the first country that pops into your head. But back in 2020, something totally unexpected happened. A story that kind of rewrote a piece of Olympic history. It's one of those stories that just challenges everything you think you know about who can win on winter's biggest stage.
It really does sound like the beginning of a joke, right? A teenager from a country famous for its sunshine and beaches winning gold in, of all things, ice hockey. Well, the answer isn't just about one incredibly talented athlete. It's about a revolutionary idea that's actually changing the rules of the game itself.
I mean, look at this. On one side, you have the usual suspects: Canada, the US, Norway, Russia, countries with deep frozen roots in winter sports. And on the other side, this beautiful anomaly, Mexico. This wasn't just a surprise, it was like a statistical long shot that paid off, big time.
So how in the world was this even possible? Well, it all comes down to a brand new, kind of experimental format that was designed to shake things up and create exactly these kinds of incredible moments.
The secret sauce here was the mixed NOC 3-on-3 tournament. Now, NOC just stands for National Olympic Committee. It's a pretty radical idea, really. Just imagine an all-star team, but instead of pulling the best players from one country, you're taking one player from many different nations and putting them all on the same team. The people who run international hockey, the IIHF, came up with this format for a really clear reason. They wanted to blow the doors wide open for more countries to get involved. And, maybe most importantly, they wanted to give super talented athletes from nations without big hockey programs a legitimate shot at the podium. This thing was designed from the ground up for inclusivity.
And this is what that vision looks like in real life. This was the roster for what they called Team Yellow. Just look at this list. You've got Louisa Wilson from Mexico playing right alongside teammates from Belgium, New Zealand, South Korea, a total of 13 different countries. Think about that. They had to overcome language barriers, cultural differences, everything to become a real team in a super short amount of time. All right, so we've got the how. Now let's get to the who. Let's focus on the heart of our story, the 14-year-old from Celaya, Mexico, who found herself right in the middle of this historic moment. This quote from her mom, it tells you everything you need to know about her mindset. From a super young age, Louisa Wilson wasn't just playing a sport. She was challenging the whole idea of where she belonged. And that fire, that determination, that was going to be her greatest weapon on the ice. And believe me, her journey was no accident. She was on the ice at just 3 years old. And after a little detour into figure skating, she chose the grit and speed of hockey. Her family saw her talent and made this life-altering decision to move to Canada when she was 11, all so she could chase her hockey dream. I mean, that is some serious next-level commitment. Okay, so let's dive into the tournament itself and see how this team of strangers, all brought together by their love of the game, managed to forge a path to glory. And what's so cool about this story is that Team Yellow, well, they weren't some powerhouse team that just steamrolled everyone from the start. They finished the first round with a record of 4 wins and 3 losses, which put them in 3rd place. They really had to fight for every single inch, which honestly just makes their win even more impressive. Then came the semifinals. This was the final score of that incredibly tense game. They were up against the 2nd-seeded Team Blue, making them the clear underdogs. But in a massive upset, they pulled off this stunning 7-5 victory. And just like that, this unbelievably unlikely team was in the gold medal game. The dream wasn't just a dream anymore. It was real. So it all came down to this. One game, January 15th, 2020, Team Yellow versus Team Black. Gold on the line. And history just waiting to be made. And they didn't just win. They absolutely dominated. A crushing 6-1 victory in the final match. After scratching and clawing their way through the early rounds, this international squad peaked at the absolute perfect moment. They left no doubt about who the real champions were. And get this. In a moment that feels like it was written for a Hollywood movie, it was Louisa Wilson herself who scored the goal that changed everything. The game was tied 1-1. She scores, and boom, all the momentum shifted to Team Yellow. It was the game winner, the goal that secured the gold medal. So when that final buzzer went off, a 14-year-old from Mexico was an Olympic champion. Just let that sink in for a second. The meaning of that moment for her and for her country was just immense. And I just love this quote from Louisa. She totally gets the two sides of this amazing win. Yes, it was a historic, groundbreaking moment for Mexico, but it was also a huge triumph for international teamwork, a perfect example of how sports can bring people together from all over the world. And back home in Mexico, they made sure this moment would never be forgotten. Her name was added to the wall of Olympic medalists in Mexico City, the first winter athlete ever to get that honor. She's not just a hockey player anymore, she's a national pioneer. Oh, and that gold medal, that was just the beginning. The momentum from that win helped get her named one of Forbes' 100 most powerful women of Mexico. And then, just a few weeks later, she helped lead the actual Mexican national U18 team to a bronze medal at their World Championship. This wasn't a fluke. This was the arrival of a major new talent on the world stage. So as we wrap this up, the whole story leaves us with a really big question, right? Louisa Wilson's gold medal was made possible by this innovative new format that was built to create opportunity. And it just makes you wonder, what other barriers could we break down in sports if we just keep thinking creatively like this? How many other unlikely champions are out there just waiting for their shot?
Well, that concludes the people category for this episode. But before we go on to the places category,
Do you want to hear an Uncle Willie joke?
well, my Italian accent isn't very good, so I made this joke online with AI.
This joke was from my friend Uncle Wilsoni, who was an Italian chef, and he says it to me. What do you call a fake noodle? an impasta. Sadly, that was the last joke that Uncle Wilsoni told it to me before he passed away.
Now, I still want you to record your Uncle Willie joke on our website at cuzwilson.com, and you do that by just clicking on the microphone at the bottom right of the page. Hint, next week's show topic will probably be about music. So just search online for a dad joke about music and send in your best imitation of an old Uncle Willie. Okay, on for the places category. Well, if you're in Italy, you do like the Italians do, and you eat great food and make great wine. Because of the Woodrow Wilson event that we covered in last week's episode, places named Wilson isn't very common in Italy. But never fear, 'cause Wilson is here. I found a Wilson named Giulio is quite the celebrity in Italy. He often blends his two passions of winemaking and music. And we review his wine vineyard for our places category.
You know those pictures of the rolling hills of Tuscany, right? You're thinking ancient vineyards, cypress trees, a place where every tradition, every family name just feels like it's been there for centuries. And that's exactly why we've got a fascinating little puzzle on our hands today.
The name is Etoy Wilson. I mean, it just sounds out of place, doesn't it? It's a name you'd expect to hear in London, maybe Chicago, but not Florence. And yet, this guy is about as Tuscan as they come. So to figure this out, we need to dive into the two very different but weirdly connected sides of his life. So first things first, let's get our hands dirty. We're going to look at the passion that ties him right to the land under his feet, his life as a winemaker. Okay, so back in 2005, Giulio, who actually has a degree in the science of winemaking, teams up with his best friend since kindergarten, Lapo Tardelli. They start this winery and they call it Dalle Nostre Mani. That translates to from our hands. And really, that name says it all. It's their whole philosophy, a totally personal, hands-on connection to everything, from the dirt to the bottle. But here's the thing, they're not just planting new vines, they're on a rescue mission. They're working with about 14 elderly local farmers to find these old, semi-abandoned vineyards and bring them back. Their whole goal is to save Tuscany's agricultural history, literally breathing new life into these forgotten plots of land. And their commitment to the old ways is serious. Instead of taking modern shortcuts, they use this incredibly traditional farming technique. It means zero plastic, zero metal. Get this, they tie the vines to the rows using natural willow branches. And yep, it's all done by hand. It's a method that really respects the plant and, the planet. This rescue mission isn't just about the land, it's about the grapes themselves. So of course they grow Sangiovese. That's the king of Tuscan grapes. But they also grow all these super rare native varieties. I mean, look at these names. Fogliatanda, Punitello. A lot of these were on the verge of disappearing completely. So in a way, Giulio is kind of a guardian of Tuscany's biodiversity. But the story doesn't stop in the vineyard, not even close, because the same man with his hands in the Tuscan soil, he's also got a voice that fills concert halls. He's living a whole second life right under the stage lights. Yep, you heard that right. When he's not checking on his grapes, Etoy Wilson is a really well-known musician. He plays the piano, guitar, saxophone, you name it. And he's a songwriter whose work has made some serious waves all across Italy. And let me be clear, this is not just a side hustle. The man is a seriously decorated artist. He's won awards for Best Songwriter, he's won major contests. He even won a competition that let him perform at the massive May 1st concert in Rome. That is a huge deal for any musician in Italy. His talent has led to him working with some incredible people, from Italian rock legends to the iconic Chilean folk group Inti Illimani. That collaboration with Inti Illimani was huge. They made an album together, did a world tour. It really put him on the map way beyond Italy. And if you want to get a sense of his music's soul, just listen to this lyric from his award-winning song Occhi, which means eyes. He's singing about wanting millions of eyes to see the world from every angle, without all the judgment. It's thoughtful, it's poetic, and it kind of mirrors that same deep, respectful approach he has to winemaking. So, we have a guy saving ancient Tuscan vines, and we have an internationally known musician. Two halves of one person. But that still doesn't answer our big question. where in the world did that very un-Tuscan name, Wilson, come from? To get the answer, we actually have to look past Giulio. The story of his name? Well, it starts a generation earlier, with his grandfather.
Okay, here it is, the big reveal. Back in 1919, right after World War I, the U.S. President Woodrow Wilson visited Italy and was treated like an absolute hero. And by some wild twist of fate, on the exact day of the president's visit, Giulio's grandfather was born. So in this huge wave of admiration, his family gave the baby the first name Wilson. And just like that, this little Tuscan family was linked to a huge moment in world history. And the name just got passed down.
All right, so now we've got all the pieces on the table. The winemaker, the musician, and the story behind the name. But how do they all fit together? You know, when you put his two passions next to each other, you start to see they're not that different after all. As a winemaker, he's saving these ancient Tuscan grapes. As a musician, he works with groups that play traditional Andean instruments. He's reviving old farming methods while collaborating with legendary folk artists. See the pattern? Both things he does are totally rooted in heritage, in history, and in telling a great story. Giulio Wilson's whole life is this beautiful blend. It doesn't matter if he's saving a grape variety from extinction or mixing Florentine songwriting with Chilean folk music. All of his work is about honoring the past to create something totally new and beautiful for the future. He's kind of a living bridge between these different worlds.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. Seeing a name like Wilson on a bottle of Tuscan wine just seems wrong, until you know the story. And behind this one label, we found presidential history, a family legacy, and this incredible passion for both art and the earth. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other amazing stories are just sitting there on a shelf, waiting for us to uncork them?
Well, I went online and I listened to some of Giulio Wilson's music, and I can see why everybody likes him. He has got an amazing voice. I saved a link for that music and I put it on our show notes at cuzwilson.com. Well, if you want to find some of his wine in the USA, it's under the brand name, and I'm probably going to screw this up, Dalle Nostramani. And Integrity Wine is their distributor, but don't confuse it with Wilson Daniels. They're a wine distributor by Win Wilson and Jack Daniels in California. Yep, don't get that one confused either. That Jack Daniels in California is not even related to the Jack Daniels whiskey. It's a little confusing. Here, let me explain. Jack Daniels, with an S, is the co-founder of the wine distributor Wilson Daniels. It is not related to Jack Daniel, with no S, who funded the famous Jack Daniels Tennessee whiskey, or commonly known as Jack Daniels, with an S. But his name didn't have an S. Do you remember last week's question? It was, what country was the founder of Wilson Sporting Goods, Thomas E. Wilson, born in, and where did he live the first 9 years of his life before moving to Chicago, where he started the Wilson Sporting Goods Company? The answer is Canada. Thomas Wilson was born in Canada, and he moved to Chicago, but he died in 1958. Now, this is kind of interesting because Chip Wilson was born in California, but he moved to Canada. There he started Lululemon, and he sold some of that stock to become part owner of Amer Sports. Last week's episode, we learned that Amer Sports owns Wilson Sporting Goods. So it's kind of like it's gone full circle, where Wilson started Wilson Sporting Goods, and now Wilson owns Wilson Sporting Goods again. Pretty cool, huh? This week's Cuz Wilson question is, since the USA has about 44,451 people whose first name is Wilson, how many countries have more Wilsons as their first name than the USA does? Here's a hint. The country of Tanzania in Africa has almost as many people who go by Wilson as their first name as there is in the United States. They have 41,961 Wilsons, therefore didn't make the list. But there are several countries who have more people that go by Wilson than the United States. Can you guess some of them? Now it's time for the things category. Since the Winter Olympic Games include the sport of figure skating on ice, I wanted to include this story about a Wilson who won an historic gold medal at the U.S. Figure Skating Championships 60 years ago. And just last year, he was finally inducted to the U.S. Figure Skating Hall
Let's
of
talk
Fame.
about Etoy Wilson. Now, he wasn't just another figure skater who won a title. He was a true pioneer, someone who shattered a barrier and really changed the face of the sport forever.
And you know, this quote from fellow trailblazer Richard Ewell, it just says it all. Before anyone else, there was Etoy. His victory wasn't just a personal achievement, it was like a lighthouse for everyone who dreamed of following in his footsteps. So here's how we're going to trace his incredible journey. We'll look at his beginnings, the mentor who shaped him, that history-making moment on the ice, the different path he forged for himself, and of course, the amazing legacy he's still building today. All right, so where does a story like this even begin? For Etoy, it wasn't some grand plan for Olympic gold or anything like that. Nope. It all started with a single moment of pure childhood wonder. Picture this. He's just 8 years old and he's already a gymnast. He goes to see an ice volley show, and when he sees these performers doing cartwheels and walkovers on skates, a light bulb just goes off. He saw this amazing possibility of mixing the power of gymnastics with the speed of skating, and right then and there, he knew he had to try it. And that one simple request for skating lessons, well, it led to a chance meeting at a rink that would connect him with the one person who could truly understand his journey and guide him through it.
That person was Mabel Fairbanks. Now, if you don't know her story, you need to. She was a legend, an absolutely brilliant skater who was flat out denied her own chance to compete because of the color of her skin. So what did she do? She poured all of that passion into making a path for the next generation. Etoy's mother, Thelma, spotted her at the Polar Palace rink and just knew this was the person who needed to teach her son.
And let's be clear, Mabel's fight was just relentless. We're talking about skating clubs slamming the door in her face, major ice shows telling her no. Can you even imagine being so good that you pass your skating tests only to have the judges literally tear up your results right in front of you? But she was so resourceful. She found loopholes, like these individual memberships, to get her skaters a fair shot. She just refused to give up. Mabel knew the unfair truth of the world her skaters were entering, so her philosophy, her core belief, was simple but powerful. It wasn't enough to just be good, you had to be excellent. You had to be so technically perfect that no amount of prejudice could deny you. And she told this to Etoy directly. He later said he completely understood what she meant without her needing to spell it out. As a black skater in that era, the bar was just set higher. He knew he had to be undeniable. So, with Mabel's incredible coaching, his own raw talent, and his mother's absolute unwavering support, Etoy was ready to step onto the national stage and make history. And his rise was just meteoric. In 1965, he breaks the color barrier just by showing up, and he lands in second place. Amazing. But he wasn't finished. The very next year, he comes back and wins the whole thing, becoming the first ever African-American national champion in U.S. figure skating. Just incredible. But here's the thing you have to wrap your head around. While he was this celebrated champion on the ice, the world off the ice was a completely different story. The year he made his debut, he and his mother were literally barred from staying at the official competition hotel because it was segregated for whites only. It's just staggering to think about. And that's why his support system was everything. Etoy has said that his mom, Mabel, and his home club, they basically created a protective bubble around him. They handled all that outsideness, as he called it, which allowed him to just focus on skating. So after reaching the very top of the novice division, you'd think the Olympics would be the next logical step. But Etoy's ambitions began to shift. Yeah, in 1969, he made a huge choice. Instead of going all in for a spot on the 1972 Olympic team, he decided to prioritize getting his degree at Loyola Marymount University. He was really drawn to this whole other world of arts and entertainment. But he didn't hang up his skates for good, not even close. He went pro and toured the globe for 17 years with huge shows like ice volleys. After that, he became a skating director in Dubai, of all places. And then he reinvented himself again, building a successful career in television production. Just an amazing, varied life. And that brings us to today, where Etoy Wilson's work has truly come full circle. Now, it's all about honoring the past to inspire the future.
He's now the executor of Mabel Fairbanks' estate. And he's teamed up with another of Mabel's famous students, the world champion, Ty Babylonia. Together, they started a production company, and their #1 mission is to finally bring their mentor's incredible life story to the screen. And then, in 2025, nearly 60 years after his historic win, Etoy Wilson finally took his rightful place in the U.S. Figure Skating Hall of Fame, a long, long overdue recognition for his groundbreaking achievements. And in that huge moment of recognition, he made sure to honor the woman who started it all. In his speech, he brought the story right back to his mother, Thelma, making it clear that her support and her belief in him were the foundation for everything. From that little kid who was inspired by gymnastics on ice to a Hall of Famer who's now preserving his mentor's legacy, Etoy Wilson's journey shows us what it means. It's not just about being the first one to break through. It's about remembering who helped you get there and then spending your life holding that door open for everyone who comes next.
Well, it took long enough for Etoy to be inducted, but at least he was still alive to receive that honor. Congratulations,
But now it's
Mr.
time
Wilson.
for Wilson's in the News.
The company we covered in last week's Things category is Amer Sports, and they own Wilson Sporting Goods. And who is their president and CEO, you ask? Well, I'm glad you did, because they appointed Carrie Ask to be president and CEO of Wilson Sporting Goods. Have you ever heard anybody's last name Ask? I haven't. That's pretty cool. Next Wilson in the news is professional basketball player A'ja Wilson, and she's launching her first global tour as a Nike signature athlete. Lainey Wilson teams up with Wrangler for a summer clothing collection. Junior ROTC cadet Keandre Wilson was awarded a prestigious scholarship. And the last one is a 185-year-old company in Brazil called Wilson Sons Ultra Tug is being sold to Houston's Tidewater Inc. for $500 million. Well, I've never heard of Wilson Sons Ultra Tug, so who are they? Oh, they're just a little maritime services company with more than 80 tugboats, and it's the largest port and maritime logistics operator in Brazil. Here's the funny thing. In one paragraph describing Wilson's history in 1862, the name Wilson was included 7 times in one paragraph. There's a link in the episode for this article, and go there and try to read that paragraph and see if you can make heads or tails out of it. Now, there's links for all the CuzBuzz stories in our show notes on our website at cuzwilson.com. Well, I hope you see why today's episode needed to be longer. There's a lot of Wilsons in this one, and especially Wilsons of color. So make sure you share the Cuz Wilson Show with every Wilson you know, and share a post on your social media too. Well, until next week, see ya, cuz. The Cuz Wilson is a product of Name and Culture Media, and we use the internet for research and Google's AI product called Notebook LM for narration and static images.